Hi guys, Olive here. Today I have part 2 of my fall/autumn book haul for you, in which I would like to show you all of the nonfiction books I've acquired recently. Given that today is Halloween, happy Halloween, and thus the last day of October, that means that Nonfiction November 2016 is starting tomorrow. Given that I am a co-host for Nonfiction November, I am obviously very excited that we're kicking off the event tomorrow, and I would love to show off the nonfiction I've acquired recently. And I thought that maybe if anyone is at a loss for what they would like to read, that this might provide some ideas. So let's get started. The first book I'd like to talk about is Poseidon's Steed, The Story of Seahorses from Myth to Reality by Helen Scales. Similarly to The Soul of the Octopus, this is a mixture of the science of the seahorse as well as their place within human culture. It seems that people, myself included, have a fascination with the seahorse, so I'm really looking forward to learning a little bit more about them in this book. The next few books are also going to be science related, the next one being Your Inner Fish, a journey into the 3.5 billion year history of the human body, written by Neil Shubin. This book talks about the story of how our human bodies developed from more primitive species, how our appendages evolved and resemble those of other creatures, where the evidence is in our genome. It just sounds incredibly interesting to read about, and I'm thrilled that I'll get to learn more about it in this book. And this next one is kind of Your Inner Fish, but the behavioral side of that. It's called Time, Love, Memory by Jonathan Weiner. Like I said, this focuses more on behavioral science. What are the origins of our behavior? Is it inscribed in our DNA? I can't get enough of this stuff, clearly. More along those lines is The Link, Uncovering Our Earliest Ancestor by Colin Tudge. This book tells the story of Ida, who you see here on the cover. She is the most complete primate skeleton that we have on record. She is also the oldest, older than Lucy. She is 47 million years old. This book will talk about how they found Ida and what the studies of her have revealed about human origins. Moving on with the science theme, but moving away from evolution, is Brilliant, The Evolution of Artificial Light by Jane Bronx. This is the history of the development of artificial light, as well as the social and environmental impacts, as well as human psychology in that we keep on craving more and more artificial light as our bodies become accustomed to it. Fascinating stuff. And very shiny. Speaking of invention and innovation, the next book I'd like to talk about is The House of Wisdom, How Arabic Science Saved Ancient Knowledge and Gave Us the Renaissance by Jim Al-Khalili. I think too many people have the assumption that scientific and mathematical advancements happened exclusively in the West, when really a lot of major innovations in our society had their roots in Eastern ingenuity. I am absolutely chomping at the bit to learn more about this. This is going to be a great one to pick up in the near future. Next book I'd like to talk about is The Monkey's Voyage, How Improbable Journeys Shaped the History of Life by Alan de Quiros. I first saw this book at Half Price Books and thought that it was too expensive, and then not even 2 weeks later I saw it at a library book sale, so it seemed meant to be. This is the study of why we see very similar species in very disparate parts of the world. It talks about how these species spread out and also debunks the myth that continental shifting is the reason why we see these species in such different areas of the world. Next up is Opium, Reality's Dark Dream by Thomas Dormandy. This is the history of the opium plant from the Stone Age to present day. Opium is a substance that comes from the poppy plant. Its derivatives are both morphine and heroin. It is used to both get high as well as to alleviate physical and mental pain, and has been used for differing methods for centuries. I know scattered facts about opium and morphine and heroin, but I don't feel as though I know enough, and it is a very interesting subject matter. As soon as I saw this at Half Price Books, I knew I had to have it. This next one is more of a reference book, but I absolutely had to have it. It is How to Read Egyptian Hieroglyphs. I saw this one at a library book sale, and as soon as I saw it, I knew I was going to have to read The Keys of Egypt for Nonfiction November, because it is the subject matter of that book that allowed this book to be possible. This book has exercises if you want to learn Egyptian hieroglyphs and learn how to write with them. I don't know that I will be using it to that end, but I certainly want to be able to page through this as I am reading The Keys of Egypt. It was just a really cool coincidence, so I had to pick it up. We are now moving into the history portion of this book haul, with the next book being Falling Upwards: How We Took to the Air by Richard Holmes. Richard Holmes is the author of The Age of Wonder, which talks about scientific development during the Romantic era. I took a class in college that was pretty much centered on that book and really enjoyed it, so I was very interested to pick this book up. This is a book about the fascination with ballooning, hot air ballooning, in the 18th and 19th centuries, and what that says about the human desire for exploration and achievement. Staying on brand on my channel, the next book I picked up is The Diary of Olga Romanov, Royal Witness to the Russian Revolution by Helena Czar. This is the diary of the eldest daughter of Nicholas II. I've read reviews on Goodreads that state that this book is pretty dull and focus more on the daily life of the Grand Duchess than anything going on at the time. I do not find this surprising, given how ignorant the royal family was of the political situation. I will be interested to read this book to supplement my knowledge on the Romanov family during the revolutionary period. I can already tell you that this is probably not a book for someone who does not have that knowledge, because it is not going to give you that in-depth information. But if you can use this to get inside Olga's head, already knowing the facts of Nicholas II's situation and revolutionary Russia, then I personally think it can be very valuable, as I think it will be to me. The last historical book I would like to talk to you about is Liar, Temptress, Soldier, Spy: 4 Women Undercover in the Civil War by Karen Abbott. This is about 4 brave women during the American Civil War who went undercover to spy on the opposite side. 1 woman was a farm girl, 1 woman was a widow, 1 woman was an abolitionist, 1 woman was a socialite. These 4 women were in drastically different social positions, in different stages of life, and yet they each had a role to play in the American Civil War. I am endlessly curious about that and will be really looking forward to reading this book. And the last 4 books I have are centered on sensory perception and food. The first book being A Natural History of the Senses by Diane Ackerman. This is a book about how we interpret the world through our 5 senses. It has great reviews on Goodreads, and according to them, it states that this book is very beautiful and is written almost like fiction. Given those statements that I read, I think that this would be a great gateway nonfiction book for people who read almost exclusively fiction, because nonfiction can be beautifully written as well. The next book is Hungry Town: A Culinary History of New Orleans by Tom Fitzmaurice. New Orleans is a city that I desperately want to visit here in the near future. It is a city that is very well known for its cuisine. So this book will obviously talk about the history of that, and also will talk about the impact that Hurricane Katrina had on the culinary industry, on New Orleans as a whole, and how the culinary scene played its own part in the city's comeback. Next up is Blood, Bones, and Butter: The Inadvertent Education of a Reluctant Chef by Gabrielle Hamilton. This is the memoir of chef Gabrielle Hamilton, who opened up her own restaurant in New York City. So it's a memoir of her experience learning how to cook, opening that restaurant, as well as her experiences cooking all over the world. The last one is also on brand. It's The Thinking Drinker's Guide to Alcohol: A Cocktail of Amusing Anecdotes and Opinion on the Art of Imbibing by Ben McFarland and Tom Sandham. I also saw this one at a library book sale, and I opened up to a random page and it was talking about Catherine the Great's relationship with beer. And I knew I had to have it. So those were all the nonfiction books that I have acquired recently. Who knows, if I finish the 8 books that I'm planning on reading for Nonfiction November, maybe I will pick up one of these. If you have read any of these or heard of any of them or are now interested in reading them, I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. Also, if you've not yet told me, I would love to hear what you are planning on reading for Nonfiction November. I'm really looking forward to getting started reading some great nonfiction books starting tomorrow. I hope you are too. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.